All right, let's dive into a story from medical history that is absolutely wild, and honestly, it's more relevant today than you might think. It's about a simple, life-saving idea and the man who was basically destroyed for daring to suggest it.
Just let that sink in for a moment. An idea that could have saved countless lives ended up ruining his discoverer. His name was Ignaz Semmelweis, and back in the 1840s, he found himself right in the middle of a terrifying medical mystery.
So our story kicks off in 1847 at the Vienna General Hospital. Now this place was supposed to be the best of the best, one of the most advanced medical centers in all of Europe. But inside its maternity division, a deadly secret was hiding in plain sight.
You see, the hospital had two different maternity wards. The first one was run by male doctors and their medical students. The second one, well, that was run entirely by female midwives, and the difference between them was, quite literally, life and death. The numbers were just staggering. In the midwives ward, the death rate was around 2%. Okay, not great by today's standards, but for the time, pretty standard. But in the doctor's ward, a horrifying 18%. It got so bad that women were literally begging to be admitted to the midwives ward because they knew their chance of survival was nearly 10 times higher. The big question was, why? So this is where our guy Ignaz Semmelweis comes in. This whole puzzle became a complete obsession for him. He went through everything he could think of. Birthing positions, different religious rites, you name it, but nothing explained the crazy difference. And then a tragic accident gave him the clue he was looking for.
A friend of his, another doctor, died from an infection after getting cut with a scalpel during an autopsy, and his symptoms were eerily similar to the women dying of so-called childbed fever. And that was it. That was the light bulb moment. The doctors and the medical students were going directly from the autopsy room, covered in what he called cadaverous particles, right into the delivery room. The midwives, on the other hand, they weren't performing autopsies.
Semmelweis' solution was so brilliantly simple. He made a new rule. Every single doctor and student had to wash their hands thoroughly in a chlorinated lime solution after leaving the morgue and before they touched a single patient in the maternity ward. That's it.
So he had his theory, and he had his new protocol. The only thing left to do was to see if it actually worked. Semmelweis enforced his hand-washing rule, and what happened next was, well, it was nothing short of a miracle. Just remember this number. This was the terrifying reality. For mothers in the doctor's ward, it meant a nearly 1 in 5 chance of death. And we're not talking about a slow, gradual change. Nope, it was a sudden, dramatic drop. The effect of just washing your hands was immediate and totally undeniable.
The mortality rate crashed from 18% all the way down to less than 1%. It was even lower than in the midwives ward. Semmelweis had done it. The numbers proved it. The data was crystal clear. He was right.
Now, you would think this would be the part of the story where everyone celebrates, right? Where Semmelweis is hailed as a hero. Yeah, you'd be wrong. His incredible, life-saving discovery was met with scorn and outright hostility. And this was really the heart of the problem. Semmelweis had the data, cold, hard, irrefutable proof, but the medical establishment just couldn't stomach what it implied, that they, these esteemed, respected physicians, were the ones carrying death from room to room. The very idea that a gentleman's hands could be unclean was a huge insult to their ego and their status. So why the pushback? Well, for one, he couldn't explain why it worked. You have to remember, this was before germ theory. The idea of tiny, invisible things causing disease was still decades away. Plus, let's be honest, Semmelweis had a pretty abrasive personality and wasn't great at winning friends. But the biggest issue was that his theory attacked the core identity of these doctors as healers. It was a truth they just refused to see. So, unable to convince his colleagues with facts and forced to watch women keep dying for no good reason, Semmelweis began a steep, tragic, downward spiral. His frustration just boiled over, he became erratic, he started writing these furious public letters, calling the doctors who ignored him murderers, and you can imagine that only made things worse. He was completely isolated, his hospital contract wasn't renewed, and he was pretty much driven out of Vienna. So you can see the whole arc here. After his brilliant breakthrough in 1847, he spent more than a decade just fighting a losing battle. By 1865, his mental health was so bad that his own colleagues tricked him into checking into a mental asylum. And in the most cruel, twisted irony imaginable, Semmelweis died just 14 days later. The cause of death? Sepsis.
a blood infection, most likely from a wound he got after being beaten by the asylum guards. He died from the very same kind of infection he had taught the world how to prevent. It wasn't until years later that Louis Pasteur's work on germ theory would finally prove, long after his death, that he had been right all along.
The story of Semmelweis leaves us with this chilling question, one that is just as relevant today as it ever was. It's this powerful, tragic reminder that sometimes data and facts aren't enough. And sometimes the biggest obstacle to progress isn't ignorance, it's arrogance.